we jump out of a plane holding onto each other and just stare into each other's eyes the entire time, and the clouds were falling behind, and I haven't felt so connected to somebody, because it's just basically that moment of pure rawness of like, oh my god, I'm about to die, and that person's looking at you, and it's just so magical. Like no mushroom journey can compare.
Hello, you beautiful bluebirds, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Blu here on the Goddess's Golden Hands. I am sitting with an individual that has come into my life quite recently, however, has made quite a profound impact already. This woman is definitely up there and in the top list of some of the most inspiring women that I know. And I'll give a little bit of a breakdown. No pressure or anything, but I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown why. So I connected with this woman through Instagram, the wonderful world of Instagram, of where apparently most of our friendships and relationships come from these days. And I was immediately completely mind blown and magnetized by the content in which she's creating. She is jumping out of planes. She is traveling to some of the most profound places on the planet. Through her lenses, I'm being reminded about what it means to truly be human and to be alive on this planet, and that life is one giant adventure waiting to be experienced. And also simultaneously with the quality of the content that is being created, also the depth of her captions and her heart-centered, heartfelt words that have been curated in such an eloquent way that allows us to go on a journey with her through her lens and through her life. And simultaneously, we then got to meet for the first time in person at a gathering the other day, and immediately, like when I go to gatherings, I find what I call anchor people. When there's a lot of energy going on, people that feel like home, like I'm like, okay, these people are my people, and I'm going to like navigate my way through these anchor people. And even though I'd never actually met Aggie in person, she became quickly an anchor person for me. So we sat together, we looked in each other's eyes, and we had a chat, and we just really got to feel each other and just start our sisterhood and our journey together. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the magnificent Aggie.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I definitely can confirm that meeting together for the first time on Sunday was just magical. And then I was like, okay, perhaps it's a little creepy that I'm spending my entire time at the party with you. So I'll just go for a little walk, come back 10 minutes later. Okay, so back to our conversation. I was so excited. I was like, it won't be creepy. So
I was hoping you'd come back. There's definitely no creepy in it.
Yeah.
Like for me, gatherings can be, there's just so much sensory overload, and there's also it's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of small talk, and it's really challenging me to navigate small talk. And when I sat with you, it wasn't small talk. It was like really getting to know each other, and I was like, I feel like my central nervous system can actually take a deep breath.
And it's so funny because I didn't know you're going to be there, to be honest, but I have been messaging you, like, would love to meet you in person, because I've been blown away by your depth and your content. So when I first saw you, I was like, oh my God, like, okay, this is it. This is Blue. I'm like, do I do a curtsy? Do I like bow? Do I say something? That's great. Like, she's the, Blue, right? And it's like, hi, like super awkward. And I'm like, and then that's like to give credit, because I think a lot of people that listen to this and watch this love you. And I think this is their only way to get to hang out with you, because they might be living on the other side of the world. They want to have a piece of Blue in their life. Mm. And I can just say that I guess I saw that, but I can confirm that just your light, and not necessarily like in the spiritual meaning, but also just like your lightness, like weightlessness that you have, is amazing. And you're everything I thought you were and more.
Oh,
so I love it.
Heart Eyes 5000. Thank you, Mama.
No, you are. So it was great. And you made me feel super comfortable. And I was like, okay, great. I don't need to speak Sanskrit to hang out with you.
Well, I have to say that like it definitely was a mutual feeling. I was like, oh, there's Aggie. Yes, amazing. And then when you would come over and sit with me, I was like, yay. And then you'd go off. I was like, And then you come back with the dog. I was like, yay.
And Andre's like, are you guys in love? And I'm like, pretty much. Like, this is great. It's such a nice
come over for dinner and then come on the podcast. You leave on Friday. Okay. And then let's do this.
Yeah. We're only 48 hours into our friendship and we're committed.
We are friends. And now also, just so you know, below the cameras, we have Peanut and Lily, my dog and Aggie's dog. Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Peanut, for saying hi. Good boy.
So now that we've sort of loved up on each other and given context to why we're sitting on the golden hands together on the podcast, I'd love to start chipping away a little bit more about who you be, because what you create on online, on Instagram, and through your various different platforms of sharing your lens of life, there's also another layer to you. There's a deeper layer. There's your story, there's your wisdom, there's your understanding, there's your tips and tools that you've cultivated throughout your life. And that was just something that really captivated me when I was talking to you, was the depth that you have within you too. And I think that there's only so much depth that can be portrayed through a picture and a caption. However, I really wanted to feel your depth through this podcast and go on a journey with Aggie. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what did it take, or what happened for you to become Aggie online, creating this content?
What a great question. I think it's interesting you say that, because I used to drive myself crazy, dying to share that depth and that wisdom, and really wanting to people see, but I'm actually really smart and I'm actually really deep and whatnot. And then I realized that what is my ultimate mission, and it was to inspire people to live their best life. And sometimes that depth doesn't translate to everybody, but what does is that feeling of possibility. And for me, I get that from nature. So hence my travel content, because I just love helping people feel elevated for a second. And I think that sometimes doesn't need to be very deep. It just has to be really simple. And if you can simplify that message and share that with others, that's where I'm at. And thanks to places like this, I get to talk a little deeper, but I don't want to be too serious, because that's another thing I love about you. And this is the last thing I'm talking about last time. But honestly, I love that your depth comes with humor and with light, which is just feels so right and feel so good. And I was just blown away about how playful you are. And it's such an attractive thing. It's just playful and light, and you don't take life seriously, but then you take it very seriously. It's the best. So that's my goal as well. I'm trying.
I mean, the rabbit hole, right? We call it the rabbit hole, based off of Alice in Wonderland, where you drink the tea or eat the mushroom, and then all of a sudden you're going down the rabbit hole, and it's doesn't end.
Yeah.
Well, I think the spiritual journey and the path to actually unlocking the secrets of the mysteries of the universe is such a deep, never-ending journey. And I think sometimes that we can get lost in that, to the point where the over seriousness sort of goes over our head and swallows us a little bit. And then all of a sudden we're missing the point of the message, which is actually remembering the lightness of all of it too, and the humor in all of it too. And so it's super important to incorporate the wisdom and the genius of a child that completely, goes into a make-believe world with a cardboard box and believes genuinely that it's an astronaut in a spaceship, and to keep that alive as an adult while simultaneously diving to the depth of what it truly means beyond the general narrative.
Yeah, you definitely walk the talk for sure, because I really feel that. And I think it's just that's the hardest thing. You constantly bombarded about this is the perfect morning routine, and this is the perfect relationship, and this is how you should deal with your business, and this is how you set boundaries. And I feel all we do all day is write down in our heads all the things we should be and we shouldn't be, and it just makes us even heavier and more serious. And getting to a place of you know what, fuck that for a second, and just take a deep breath and feel that lightness that you already are all of those things. If anything, you just have to be reminded that they're there within you. Because the other day I was thinking I want to be more patient and I want to be more that, but you are those things naturally. It's just everything else is causing you to not be that. So just kind of returning home. And for me, again, I only get that when I just truly immerse myself in the flow state in nature, and I feel, oh yeah, that's it.
I mean, your flow state is actually very contagious in this sense. The utilizing your platform has an incredible way of getting a message out to a large amount of people. And what I'm receiving, and like I shared before, is such a permission slip. And I think that social media is here inevitably. However, how we utilize it and how we inspire others is really up to us. And what you're doing with your platform is really inspiring and activating us in ways that, or from my perspective anyway, in ways that really allow us to believe that anything is possible when it comes to actually physical travel. And how magnificent this giant rock is that is hurling through space at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour, hurled into orbit by a giant ball of fire. To be human is actually a miracle.
And it's so much fun. And it's like another thing where I guess I keep thinking I'm talking to very spiritual people if they're here. And I think that a lot of times we just almost are hating on the fact we're human. Like, oh, I hate that I have all these needs and that I'm hungry and I hate that I have sexual drive. And it's like the deeper people go, the deeper they somewhat resent the fact how weak they are as humans. And I'm like, but it's also so beautiful and it's great. And I think it's just like enjoying the planet Earth, and traveling turns you into such a listener because you just watch and makes you question everything you thought was normal, and you get to decide what's normal because you see all around the world. You see how different communities live, and there are some communities where women are super powerful and they're the bosses. And here we are in the Western world feeling like it's a men's world, and we need to empower ourselves, which if you talk to some tribes around the world, they would just laugh at us. I'm like, what do you mean? Woman is the one who like brings people together and she's the queen and whatnot. It would be just funny to even explain how Western society works. So that's what I love about traveling. You don't need to even leave this planet to realize how different life can be. It can be just, you can live it on your own terms.
Now we've had Peanut come join us on the podcast because below the actual filming, Peanut and Lily are actually falling in love and they are playing rigorously on the floor. And so we have decided to incorporate Peanut into the podcast. If he has any words of wisdom to share, then you are so welcome to do so, little man.
Go for it, Peanut.
So you travel more than anybody that I think I know ever. And you're always in a different country, like almost every week. It's actually pretty wild. So I've got quite a few questions to unpack. What does it feel like to actually do that? Because I think that there's also a lot of the glamorous side that you share online. However, I'm curious, there's got to be some stuff behind the scenes, which is not so glamorous.
So many.
And so how do you find yourself or how do you create grounding practices while you're always moving from place to place? How do you remain grounded ultimately? I'm not saying that you're always grounded. Of course, there's the challenging moments, but I'd love to see sort of like what goes on behind the scenes that we don't see on Instagram when it comes to traveling this much.
I'm going to be so boring and say, make sure you have a good morning routine. I travel with my own big pillow. Everyone makes fun of me, but it makes me feel like I'm home no matter where I am. And I think sleep is the basis of everything, especially with different time zones. And, I have my Aura ring. I check how well I sleep. And I think that like has a massive impact on the rest of the day. And it really changes, first of all, my time alone in the morning. It makes me either overwhelmed and overstimulated by so many things happening, or it makes me excited. It's such a thin line between excitement and anxiety. Especially for me, especially I can see that on the day when I go skydiving, which we can talk in a bit, but there are days when I'm just so terrified still to get on that plane. It hasn't changed in all these months. And there are days when I'm like, yes. And it all depends. It just shows you the vibration that you're on. And it's so good to set that. And I love that you promote that on your channel so much and give people some guidance. And I think the best thing about the morning routine is like, pick what works for you, and it works. Different things work for other people, but make sure it's a little script that you always follow. And it's not something that like, oh, today I feel like journaling and tomorrow I actually want to do something else. Like, no, just keep it short and keep it just as little as 2 sentences. And just make it your own. I think it just changes how you see the world, literally, especially for me.
What does your morning routine look like? Because like on my social media, like I'm always time lapsing my morning routine, and
it's not a time lapse, guys. This is
I'm just like really fast. But I cannot emphasize it enough, because I think that even just not traveling and just being human right now is already quite challenging. And so it's the anchor point. Amidst the storm, it creates the deep root so that the tree doesn't get uprooted. So a lot of people have shared with me that, it's great to do a devotional practice because you're at home all the time. However, you're saying actually it keeps me grounded when I'm traveling all the time. So I would love to know, based off of, you being in different hotels and experiences quite often, like almost every week, what does your morning practice and devotional practice look like?
It's super short, because a lot of times we have to, as photographers, like get up early and take photos, which isn't ideal for a morning practice. But for me, definitely not being on my phone. Whenever I have an alarm on my phone when traveling, I have an affirmation app. So like if I do grab it, the first thing I see is like a beautiful sentence, and my phone is always on airplane mode. So regardless of the fact whether it's mom or your best friend, you still go into that like mode of a role in someone's life. So like that's just, I'm not reading any text or obviously no Instagram, no social media. And sometimes it's just as quick as like writing down on a piece of paper. In hotels you get those little booklets with just like and a pen for free to just write down a couple of notes, and just write down 3 things I'm excited about today or grateful for. And usually they're the things that I usually find as my challenges, but I'm trying to find a way to thrive in them. So I'm like grateful and what that means. And sometimes if I manage to meditate, that's great. If I don't, even if you can sit down like in the bathroom, like that's the thing about like we stay in the most incredible places, but sometimes you're in the same room and someone else is already up and you just want your space. I'm an introvert, so I do. Sometimes just sit like close the toilet seat. It's such a like closed space, and sit down, take 3 deep breaths and just exhale and try to walk barefoot in nature. I guess these are like the basic ones. So these are the ones that I can do in 5 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be long. Obviously at home, it takes me an hour because I meditate, this and that. But like if you don't have time, and I totally can see that because we wake up oftentimes at 4:30 in the morning, trying to take some photos, and sometimes sleep is the best thing you can do. And 5 minutes is enough to make me like just reminded why I'm here for.
I feel like it is, even if it's 5 minutes or 35 minutes or an hour, more so it's a moment of pause.
Yeah. And the showing up, just the fact you did show up for yourself.
My friend Brianna says that our attention plus our intention equals magic. So if we just place all of our attention and then we place our intention for the day, or our gratitude for everything that we have, or things that are creating for the day, it actually sparks like the energy of magic that ripples for the rest of the day. So morning practice, just as long as there's attention, intention, even if it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, and a lot of times I feel like when we see something, what you post, you feel like, oh shit, I can't do it. So you end up not doing it because it's quite intimidating when you see like someone really nailing their morning routine, and I totally can relate. But I think it's more like in a relationship. Sometimes you can have 3 hours to talk to your best friend, and sometimes you just want to check in. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about you and I'm here for you. And it's literally your own relationship with yourself where you just like, it's going to be a busy one, and I'm so sorry I don't have time for a 3-hour morning routine, Aggie, as I'm talking to myself, but I love you. I think about you. You're my priority, and we're here in this together, which is such a nice message to send to yourself.
It's a relationship with the divine, relationship with spirit, or something greater than ourselves. Speaking of relationships, you are in a relationship with a beautiful beloved, a brother from the UK.
Yes.
Representing. And the two of you, a lot of the content is of you two together and traveling together. He is also a content creator, videographer, photographer, very, very extremely talented. Your skill sets go hand in hand. I'm curious with the amount, well, I guess this is a 2-part question. You're very transparent with your life online, meaning that you film a lot of it and you share a lot of it. So I'm curious, does the content creation put pressure on your relationship? Does it create any like division or disconnect within your relationship? Or does it actually allow you to collaborate in a way that it brings you closer together?
I think it brings us closer. I think it's twofold, because from one hand, creating together, Jacob is truly, I think, a genius when it comes to photography. I just really love it. It's more of my passion, but we love creating together. And I think it's the flow state for both of us. And we have a lot of fun. We just laugh and we really, really like it. So in that sense, brings us together. But then there's the delivery of that content, right? Which it's like two steps, right? And I share a lot. And obviously I know it's not exactly, I can see why some people would find it maybe embarrassing because I openly share about our struggles and how we disalign on certain things or what we don't like about each other. And people are like, oh my God, how can you like share that? And I think it's just like, if anything, makes us stronger because we call it out publicly that, okay, it's not always perfect, but we still love each other so deeply. And we really love our partnership regardless of those little, we don't have to pretend like it's perfect and everything's like, we never fight, but we do. But we always really just care for each other and really want to see the other person succeed, right? So Jacob really goes out of his way. As you know, he texted you before the podcast and he texted me just hoping we're going to have a good time, which is so thoughtful.
Mm-hmm. Super thoughtful. What a cutie. I can't wait to meet him.
Boom.
And I'm really grateful, by the way, that you do share the challenging times too, because it's so easy to create this like filtered world on Instagram and like everybody thinks, oh, I want a relationship like that. And then create this mental image of this like perfect Disney relationship that actually is not based in reality, where there's got to be the exhale with the inhale for breathing to even be possible. We have to live in the polarities of a really challenging part of the relationship, but then ultimately deepens the relationship down the line. And that's why it was set up for that specific reason, to move through it together. But if you're just sharing like, oh, I'm so in love, but like none of this side, then
I feel like we would do better. I feel like people that do share, oh, it's amazing. Actually, their content goes better on Instagram. I feel like I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, here's the reality. You can love someone. He's the one, like I remember the moment when I met him and the time stop and whatnot, but then it's really just, he's a mirror and it's a lot of work and, you know, sometimes we're just busy or whatnot. So I am no longer in shame about how, like what being human is, and being human to me means maybe not struggling, maybe struggling isn't the right word, but being challenged in the relationship. And I'm open about sharing those challenges because I think it's part of the deal. Like it's not something I should hide from people. I'm proud of it. I was like, cool, yeah, we worked through this. Look, this is great.
I had a friend say to me once that our relationships, our romantic partnerships are specifically designed to trigger us in the areas in which we need to grow. And so that's actually why our union comes together, for mutual growth for both people involved. And when we get triggered in those areas, it's really just an area of our psyche that there is not awareness sent into it. So we can utilize the mirror of our relationship to grow exponentially as a sovereign being, but then come into union with each other through the growth, which then it's like the ultimate dojo. It's the ultimate playing field where our muscles grow.
It really is. Again, if you don't take it too seriously and you just remember, like, oh my God, it's fun. It's a game, right? Like he's helping me become my best self and I'm helping him in the most loving way instead of just stressing out too much about it. Then yeah, it's a lot of fun to be in a relationship.
Because you're traveling so much and because he's also got his own individual endeavors that are outside of your collaborations, how do you manage the long distance part of the relationship?
I really like it. No, I think it's like long term will be a lot, but I think it's just because I'm an introvert, so I can really just recharge my battery. So we've been away for the last week now, and like fire needs air. Like it was so good for me to like miss him and have time to write a thoughtful message to him, because I was like, oh, but you have no idea what, like taking a step back by not having you around, it just showed me how much you bring into my life and allow me to do. And I miss you and I can't wait to see you again.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a fine line when you just become too independent and then it's like, it's not necessarily a union. But I think for us, having that individual time is really, really good.
I could not agree with you more. Like to call it, I heard someone call it this before, like a polarity pause. So it's like an opportunity to reinstate the polarities in the partnership. Because if we're with the other person all the time, then there's nothing to catch up on because we've been with each other the whole time. So like we don't sit down and like have like an actual conversation or like create that polarity within the love making again or like that spark again. But when there's been time apart and I've spent a week somewhere else and Andre spent a week somewhere else, we come back together and it's like, oh, how you doing? How was it? Tell me your experience. I tell you my experience. And the love making is like fiery because we've missed each other so much. Yeah, we're talking about that. Or on the other side of it, just working from home, always around each other. We sit down, we don't have anything to say because
I feel like the funny thing is that when you spend a lot of time together and you start growing apart, your initial reaction is to spend more time together because you're like, oh my God, we're growing apart. We need to spend more time together. But I'd say spend some time alone or like away from each other. And then when you do spend time together, let it be quality time. Instead of like just having that pressure of like, oh, we need to do everything together because we're now growing apart, which is like counterintuitive. Right?
That's why I recently just got myself an office space like outside of the house because up until this point, it's just been, you know, do the podcast, which is, by the way, I'm in my guest room of my house. It looks like a full set and it is a full set, but this is actually the guest bedroom of my house. And Andre's office is right there. And then the bedroom is the next one. And then we just live, work, operate, do everything in the house. And so to create that polarity of like, the missing each other and the connection, I was like, okay, it's time to invest in an office space that is not here. So that in the day I do my morning practice, I do my routine, I go to the gym, I eat my breakfast, and then it's like, bye babe, see you later. In like, 7 hours, I'll be back. And then go interact with other people and beautiful humans and co-create and mastermind and all of the things. And then come home and be like, how was your day? Let me know. Let's catch up. Let's put our phones aside. Let's be really present with each other.
And another great thing is you can practice is like try not to text each other throughout the day because this is like even our grandparents, like there was no text or phone call. Like you went for a day out to work and then you came back and you could talk about what happened at dinner. But here's like, oh, I got a text from that one and this is what we're doing. So you basically have all of these conversations over text all throughout the day and it doesn't stop even when you're away. Yeah. So if you do go to work, like don't text each other. And then when you get to see each other, it's just going to be fresh because you have something to look forward to and something to share. It's like we kind of lost that that magic. I think it still stays when you get engaged or you have a baby, you just want to tell people in person. Right. But then everything else you don't, like it just becomes so casual over text. But I would just say, just don't text your boyfriend.
Do you have Jacob's location on your phone?
No.
I have Andre's. We have each other's.
Oh, I don't know if I want to know. I feel like I would check way too often. Like, it's better not.
I definitely check way too often. Like I wake up in the morning and he's not in the house. I'm like, where could he be? And instead I'm like, oh, he's at Whole Foods. All right. He'll probably be back in 15 minutes. Great. Okay, got it. Like I'm always
that's great though. That's another thing. It's just like, but I think it's great to just miss each other.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you on that one.
And disconnect your location for a day. I'm kidding, obviously. Not.
We love you, Jacob. We love you, Andre.
Yeah.
So, talking about social media and being so transparent with the highs, the lows, but majoritarily your lens on your travel and showing parts of the world that the majority of us will never or have not experienced yet. What would you say is, because you're so active on social media, what would you say is the negative side effects of social media? And then we'll go into the positives too. We'll create both polarities, but something that you would say that has impacted you in a way that you've had to create some sort of like a discipline around it or a structure that allows it to not completely consume your mental health.
I'm still in the process. I don't think I nailed it down yet, but I definitely feel like you can you feel so good about your life, and you just had a deep chat with a friend, and you're just petting your dog in a like apartment that's my apartment isn't. Oh yes, that's your that's the dog.
Yeah.
You're petting Fina, and I sit in an apartment that's by no means is my dream apartment, but it's good. It's really good. It's my home. And then 2 seconds later, watch someone's stories on Instagram, and you feel like you want their life, but you actually don't. Like I don't want to be doing fashion weeks. I did a couple, and I just was miserable. But then I want things I know I don't want because I'm just seeing them, and they're sold in such a beautiful package that it makes me want things I don't want. And that's just really, really twisted. Because if someone gave me an option to switch lives, I wouldn't. But I still feel like, yeah, it's that that feeling. Oh, I guess FOMO is the right word. And what did I do to have the practice? I think it's just really, it's so available. And we fluctuate throughout the day on between being in a very good mental space and not so good, because maybe we just got some bad feedback from my boss or whatnot. And then you start watching stories, and it gets you deeper and deeper into that like trap of comparison and FOMO, and feeling like you're not doing enough because everyone's just has their life figured out. And, you know, I was scrolling on Instagram the other day. I was like, oh, make sure you have a morning routine and like write down 3 of your goals and this and that. And just like, imagine you just had a shit day. Your baby was crying, and you didn't get a morning routine 3 nights in a row. And you just hear that, and it just makes you feel like, how come everyone else gets to, get it right and I can't? So I definitely feel like that's a massive risk about social media. I don't think we're meant to be compared and compare ourselves to others in that way, but we do from an early age. And anything from followers to likes to whatnot, constantly being put against each other by other people oftentimes. And sometimes you anticipate that someone will compare you, so you decide not to do something, not to avoid that comparison. It's a shame. And I don't know, I would ask you, as the wisdom woman, what would be the best way to avoid that?
Well, first and
I'm
foremost,
sure you compare yourself to other medicine women.
What was that?
You compare yourself to some extent. So I don't know if it happens to you a lot these days, but I'm sure you've been caught up in the comparison.
Well, first and foremost, I'm pretty discerning with who I follow, and not just getting bombarded with all different types of energies that are like infiltrating into my day, because I think that our brains are like sponges, and once you see something, you can't ever unsee it. And so there's a level of discernment of like, what do I want? If you look at your mind like a temple, what do I want in my temple? I don't want someone like walking in with their shoes, So there's like a certain level of discernment of like, what do I want to absorb? And so I follow a lot of people, but I mute them. I'm like mute their stories, and because if I feel like it's very, I don't know, maybe self-absorbed content, or constantly like, I don't know, I walk away from a feeling of not feeling super inspired. Then it's not about a judgment, because everyone's going to have their own unique lens of how they perceive their content. But for me personally, what I would like to keep my Instagram feed is like an altar, like to go into it and be like, oh, super inspired by that human. Oh, what a beautiful thing that they're doing. And I think that the lens gets shifted a little bit from comparison to inspiration. And so when I see someone personally, someone that's doing their morning practice, and then I check in with myself and go, hey, I didn't do my morning practice this morning, but that's super inspiring. It'll probably just shift me 1 degree to actually go and do my practice. Or if I see someone working out, I'm like, oh, that's really inspiring. I'm actually going to go and get a membership at the gym. So it's really about the discernment and the filtering process of fine combing through the people that I follow and who actually shows up as like my top 5 people on my Instagram stories.
5, actually.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer.
It's great.
And then,
but what happens if one of your top 5s, like all of a sudden they do something or say something, and you find yourself feeling like, oh, am I doing enough? Is my morning practice good enough? I should be doing this. Should, the worst word in the dictionary, right?
Well, I feel like it's for me, it's the same relationship that I have with jealousy. And jealousy's been something that I've talked about like openly on the podcast, and it's not showed up sort of within like other people just rocking their lives, but more so within my romantic partnership, has showed up in the past. And how I broke down jealousy was realizing that actually the very person that I'm jealous about is my greatest teacher, showing me and indicating all the things that I want to develop within my own life. So if I flip it on its head of being like, oh, this is someone that I should be threatened by, and actually flipping it to it's creating a trigger within me because it's an area of my life that I want to develop. So I write a list of the things that they are exhibiting that I want to create in my life, and then I make an action step to actually go do those things.
Wow.
And so I apply the same methodology to social media and seeing like, if I'm going, oh, I'm comparing myself with that person, it's just an inquiry of like, hey, where have I fallen off my practice? Or where have I fallen off my exercise routine? Or for another piece that you do, which is just so inspiring to me, is jumping out of an airplane at thousands of feet above the earth, just free falling and all of these amazing shapes in the air. And I'm like, that scares the shit out of me. That's also extremely inspiring to witness your journey around that piece. And so I booked in a skydiving course. Like,
Oh yeah. That's so good.
And so instead of like placing you like you've done something better or you're more evolved, it's actually utilizing your reflection in my life as an inspiration to be more of myself.
Oh, that's so smart. Such a great lens to look at things, right? Because I think I heard the other day that jealousy is just shows you that whatever these people are doing brings them joy that you might be missing doing what you're doing.
Exactly. So it's an amazing opportunity to get to know yourself even deeper. So instead of like, oh, I feel that thing again, it's like, welcome it to the table. It's a welcome to have a seat here and let's chat about it. Well, what do you want? What are you telling me? Oh, you're telling me that, oh, great. This is an opportunity for me to come into more wholeness. Amazing. Thank you, teacher. And then blast them with love.
Yeah. I never really have like negative thoughts. If anything, I just feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like I don't feel really like jealous. I don't really feel like I don't want these people to do well. I see them do so much and I feel like, oh shit, that's what makes me feel shit. Or not, like I am not doing enough. Am I doing enough? And that's just been my massive area of growth because I constantly feel like I should be doing more. And it's really hard for me to just freaking chill and just take a day off and not work. But they always say like, if you can't take a day off, you need a month of vacation.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, you need to take even more days off.
Yeah.
I think also you're speaking on behalf of so many people, specifically with us being the very first generation that's ever had social media as such a forefront in our consciousness for the most part, right? Like all over the world, it's not the case. When I go traveling, social media is just something that happens very, very deep in the background. But specifically living in Los Angeles and being in a bubble of content creators and creating content for the masses, it's definitely a prevalent conversation. And so we are learning as we go along. And I think having these conversations is an opportunity for us to be able to understand how to navigate it as a tool but not a burden, and something that enhances our experience but doesn't play a weight where it kind of takes us out of ourselves.
And it's so great when people are transparent and you have a circle around you with people that share their struggles of building something. Because if it's up to Instagram, everyone's just working on an amazing new project and stay tuned and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, fuck, am I the only one that doesn't have an exciting new project happening? Like, what's going on? And then you just realize that actually you talk to them, it's like, oh, I really struggle with this one, or this didn't fall through. I had 3 other projects that didn't work out. And you're like, oh yeah, same, actually. Yeah, fair play. And I think it's just like, that's a great message to remember that if people become a little bit more transparent about their struggles and not treat them as failures or something to be ashamed of, but something that is just part of the journey, then it's great. Then it makes you feel like, oh, cool, I'm struggling, but it's normal. Like, it's just like, it's part of the deal.
I found actually that it's not our joys and our achievements that connect us, it's our suffering, because not everybody can tap into the same avenue or lane of the things that we're joyful about. However, everyone has and will suffer in this life and can relate to that piece. So actually, when we take the veneer off around who we think we're supposed to be online, I'm supposed to present myself in this certain way, but actually be like, hey, I'm human today. I've slept 2 hours. I'm PMSing. I'm super sad. I don't see any beauty in the world. And I post myself like what actually the content that has been received in the way of like, oh, she's human.
And I think that's, sorry to interrupt, but I think this is what made my skydiving story so interesting for so many people and just basically blew up. So for those of you who don't know, maybe a bit of a timeline. When I was 18 years old, I booked myself a tandem because I was like, that just looks like something I would like. And I was so terrified. I couldn't even breathe. It was the worst experience of my life. I was like, oh my God, terrible. Never again. And then 10 years later, everyone's like, skydiving's great. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try one more time. I went again, did a tandem. I didn't enjoy a single second of it. I was like, I'm so terrified. And I was just like, this is not who I want to be and what I want to do. And this is terrible. And then I started dating a skydiver. And we had these little chats of like, what are our non-negotiables? And let's just come up with the most perfect day you can possibly think of. And he's like, well, if I was to design my perfect day, then I would perhaps go like skydiving for half of it. And I was like, what? I was like, your perfect day involves skydiving? Like just because you want to do it? I'm thinking like, oh my God, like they would have to pay me big money to even try one more time. And that just like opened eyes to me. And I'm like, wow, like he really wants to do it more and more, and it takes a lot of time. And this is the time where we would have to spend away from each other, which is totally fine to have different passions and whatnot. But for me, it was just that invitation of like, I completely don't understand what he can see in it. And I was just very curious. I'm like, how can he like it so much? Let me figure this out. So I decided to do my license, which basically means that you sit in a class for 8 hours and talk about all the things you can possibly die and can go wrong. And the next day at 7 a.m., you jump out of a plane by yourself with an instructor next to you, but you're completely by yourself. And that's your first jump. And I've become known at the drop zone in Dubai where I was doing it as the most crying, like the biggest crier in the history of skydiving, because I cried so much. They were like, I just came down. I was like, oh my God, I almost died. This is so crazy. I was so terrified. I couldn't believe it. I had nightmares for 3 days prior, just feeling like I'm going to fall out. And I couldn't imagine I would jump out of a plane. And after 3 or 4 jumps, my instructor's like, I see what you're doing. Every time, because one thing that I couldn't stand is like when you stand on the verge of a plane and see people in front of you disappear, like falling down, that would give me like a stomach turn. So every time I would be like, no, this way. It's like, I see what you're doing. You need to look because it's for safety. And I just couldn't bring myself to see someone, especially Jacob, like fall down. I get excited when I talk about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he was just like, start small. Look at just one person falling. And then it just like worked my way. Did my 25 jumps. And like I promised, I was like, okay, I'm going to try 25 jumps, which is the A license. And then the 26, I was able to jump with Jacob for the first time. And I was like, it better be fucking worth it, because this was 3 weeks. That was a very difficult time. And then we jump out of a plane holding onto each other and just stare into each other's eyes the entire time. And the clouds were falling behind. And I haven't felt so connected to somebody, because it's just basically that moment of pure like rawness of like, oh my God, I'm about to die. And that person's looking at you, and it's just so magical. Like no mushroom journey can compare. And I was like, oh, I like this. This is cool. And you know, since then I did 120 jumps, and I still get scared, and I still feel like, oh shoot, like one small mistake of me, you know, not pulling something, or I had a line twist, which is basically your parachute gets tangled and you have to undo it, and just the adrenaline kicks in. But for me, it's like the biggest teacher, because there are days when I'm sitting on a plane and I'm shaking. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it's definitely like, this is crazy. I shouldn't be afraid. I hear from other like dudes that are jumping like, well, if you're afraid, it's not the sport for you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, because there are days when I'm just so excited and I'm not scared at all. And it's a mirror. It shows me what vibration I'm on. Sometimes I'm vibrating near fear, sadly, because I'm caught up on life. But there are days when I'm actually vibrating on the frequency of courage and love and that confidence and joy. It's the best. And with every single jump, I think I'm bringing myself closer to that, to to that carriage, the vibrational carriage versus fear.
I look at one photo of you hanging out the side of an airplane with a giant smile on your face, looking like your hair is like perfectly done, you know, everything, like you got your helmet on and your outfit and you're like hanging off the side of the airplane. And I'm like, this photo gives me anxiety, let alone like
I don't know if you can see, it's a side of a helicopter and my shoe didn't
That's
even
right, a
fit.
helicopter. Yeah, that
and my
was
shoe
it.
didn't even fit. So my leg was like shaking because you're hanging.
I mean, the wind up there as well. I've skydived twice and I remember them opening the plane and it's like loud and then like, all right, jump. And I'm like, what? Like nothing in my body is like, yeah, this is a great idea. I'm just going to plummet to my death. Let's just spring myself out the side of this plane right now. Everything in my body is like, you are crazy. Go sit back down. What are you doing? Like just over and over. And what's so inspiring is that if you started from this place of getting the award for #1 crybaby skydiver in the history of skydiving, and then to actually, you know, be standing on the side of this helicopter, like, and then voluntarily push yourself off and sort of nosedive and all of these things, like you create a reference point that if you start from here and you just continue to lean into that scares you, you can start really applying this to everything in our lives. Not saying that everybody needs to go jump out of a plane. Like that's not really the default here. But what I'm talking more about is that instead of feeling the fear and going, oh, no, this is not for me. This feels really, really uncomfortable. To actually go, oh, there's something really here. And I'm actually up level in my awareness by continuing to lean in and blowing my own mind over and over and over again. Because ultimately that's what it feels like it was there for, just to...
Yeah, and I think to just give people some sort of guidance, if anything, how I even got there. Because that's really interesting, how you can go from being completely paralyzed to actually doing something. That's like, I think we're all asking the same question. And when I did the photo that you are talking about, I got a message from someone and it said that all my life I was looking at brave things, and my vision board always have photos of men doing this. And this is for the first time I see a girl in a pink outfit doing something badass. And I think for me, that was really helpful to look at other women in the sport that are just truly enjoying themselves. And I think women skydivers are actually better than men because it's flying, right? We're just fairies. So it comes in a way easier for us. And I think the best flyers are actually women. So for me, that was super helpful to take deep breaths and I just remember that there is someone like a role model that I can completely relate to that struggled and was afraid and still didn't. I can't really get inspired by someone who's like, oh yeah, I'm not scared at all. This is great. Blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, you don't have the fear gene, bye. Like, you know, and same goes for my previous experience with sailing. So when I was 25, I sold everything I had because I was just kind of burned out and never sailed before in my life. And me and my ex sailed from Mexico to Australia. We got a boat on eBay. Neither of us ever sailed before and just got sailing for dummies. I'm like, we'll figure it out. We just got like a super old sailboat. And the book said, oh, the nearest island's going to be in 3 weeks. So like we went to Costco, we bought some food. And I was like, okay, 3 weeks, that should be fine. Like ignorance is a total bliss because it's like what we did was kind of crazy. And then obviously we didn't know how to sail. So instead of 3 weeks, it took us 8.5. So my mom would call the embassy like, oh, my daughter's lost at sea because we had no satellite phone, no contact to call for help, to be in touch with anybody. And they're like, well, it's too bad she's in the middle of the Pacific. We have no idea. So my mom literally was just like, reported me lost and thought I was dead. 8.5 weeks is a long time. Like 5 weeks late is a long time to not hear from your daughter. And we showed up. Sorry, Mom. And then we showed up. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And we just kept going. And it took us 10 months. But I learned how to sail. And I also learned how to that was like I'd say the biggest spiritual experience of my life. Being in those storms and really feeling like you're going to die. And I think it's just like what teaches you to live is death. Really. So if, I'm not saying go out there and try to kill yourself, but just remember that you will, right? Remember that you will. And yeah.
So you have gone from ticking skydiving off the bucket list to the sailing off your bucket list. The other day you went dancing.
Yes.
You did some sexy dancing with Kelly Brenda.
Yeah, I did.
And the video that you posted, actually, you were like, oh, I'm stiff. And then, but then when you actually, I read the caption before I actually saw you dancing, and I was like, bracing myself for something like super, actually really good. I was like, this is the first time she's going to nail it. I'm curious, is there anything else on your bucket list that feels like something that you would like to tick off?
I think it would be singing. I think I have deep-rooted shame around singing. And I always look at whenever I see like you, like with the guitar that you posted or whatever, I was like, wow, like I don't have a musical talent, but I think I don't need to have a musical talent and be Beyonce. I can be Beyonce if it's not good. But I don't have to be. Like, I don't have to be the best dancer in the world. I don't have to be the best skydiver, but like it's about the process of getting there. Yeah. And so funny with skydiving, you can go into a tunnel to practice. And a lot of very good skydivers practice a lot in a tunnel because you can do 20, 30 minutes of free flying in a tunnel in 30 minutes versus to get 30 minutes of free fall in skydiving, it's going to take you 2 weeks because you fall for a minute, but it takes 20 minutes to go up on a plane, then 10 minutes to land, then you have to repack your parachute, then you have to wait in line. So it's a slow process. Everyone's like, you should do tunnel. And I'm like, no, but I love the process. Like, I don't need to be amazing at the 100 jumps. I'm here just for the learning part. I'm not here to become. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so true when it comes to singing. I'm sure I love singing. I just hear myself and I'm like, oh no, actually, remember, you shouldn't be singing. You shouldn't be dancing because there are people that are better at dancing. And I'm like, I think this is like on the bucket list. I would feel really disappointed if I died tomorrow and didn't try the basic things that I was told that only the good, people that are talented in them should stick to.
Mm-hmm. Being process orientated, not goal orientated. Yeah. And that is the way that we can live to blow our own minds, not anybody else's minds, so that we could put as much paint on the canvas as we want in this life.
Beautifully said.
Why not? So I've got some brilliant Aggie questions in my hand.
Oh my God.
Just a little fun fact. Aggie recently came out with, was it you and Jacob or just you?
Both of us.
So Aggie and Jacob is who we just spoke about before, Aggie's beloved, have come out with these cards called When Traveling. Exhibit A. And when you came over for dinner the other night, cooked up some nice vegan tacos.
And you didn't let me bring any food. I was like, fuck, I need to bring something. So it's like, I grab a dog bone for your dog. And I was like, oh, I have the game. I'll bring you the game.
It was great. I mean, Lily has not stopped eating the dog. I think she actually ate the whole thing this morning. That's great. But I woke up last night and I was like, oh, what? Oh, it was in the bed. Bone, okay. She had buried it in the bed. Really gets really creative with the ways of how she can bury the bone. Anywho, this is one of the gifts, which I absolutely adore the questions on them. So I've pulled out a few and I'm just going to shuffle them randomly. Like, here we have it first. I'm going to ask Aggie some questions from her own game.
Let's do it.
The What's Perfect. They're questions sort of around traveling.
But it's designed to bring people closer. And I think it was just like my legacy. I looked back at like swimwear, Instagram, and I was like, it's like at the end of the day, I want people to just feel like they're closer because that's what travel does to me. I feel closer to other humans. Mm-hmm. So then one day I was like, I need to like have like a legacy project. And that was basically it. Mm-hmm. Just 150 questions. Talk about travel.
So I created like a little I think it's a 3-step process of how to create deep connection. Okay. It was ask dope questions, listen intently, and then reflect the beauty that you see.
Ooh.
And so whenever any gathering, just like ask amazing questions. And sometimes we can like run out of like great questions, but not if you have this game.
Yeah, straight in your pocket.
Like 150 amazing questions in your pocket. So any awkward silences, you can just whip them out and ask some amazing questions and listen intently.
It is helpful though, for sure. Like a lot of times, like we like with Jacob, like we end up talking so much about work when you're passionate about what you do. I don't know what it's like for you, Andre, but we just like work. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like whip up the game. We need to talk about something different. It's sometimes hard to think because we're like, let's talk about something different. It's like silence and no phones. And it's like even more silence, which is fine. But then we were like, oh yeah, we'll come up with like a cheat sheet.
You can whip these out. Okay, first question. Ready?
Yeah.
In your opinion, has social media improved the way we travel or made it worse? Explain.
I don't want to be negative, but I definitely has seen a massive change from 7 years ago when people were definitely curious and open to locals and to culture, and now just getting in just to get the shot and have become quite disrespectful to what's in front of them when it's locals or nature. So I'm gonna say probably that part of it isn't great. The other part, I feel like more people travel, and I feel like more people still value in traveling, and in that sense, that's amazing. And I think the more people travel, the more we see that you get to make your own opinion about other countries, not listen to CNN, who tells you that we're all different and, we should be afraid of each other and whatnot. So I think the more people travel, the more they will be like, no, we're not. I've just been to Turkey and I've just been to Jordan, and people are actually really nice. And I don't believe what I'm hearing, so this can't be right. So,
Amazing. I mean, I think also with social media, we are, we all become the media now. We are all our own little media outlets, and instead of turning on the news or turning on a TV show, we wake up and we look at people's Instagram stories.
Yeah.
So it's like an amazing way to actually have a sort of secondhand experience of a country, because someone's there in real time of what's actually going on in that country, as opposed to what the news depicts of what's going on in that country.
Exactly.
Without the agenda or the filters of what goes on. But it's like a little bit more of a clearer vision and a deeper understanding.
Yeah.
Ooh, ready for the second one? Tell me a story about a random act of kindness someone's done for you in a foreign country.
Oh, I feel like I want to ask you this question.
Well,
You travel a lot.
You can
I
ask
like the Nepal story.
You can ask me in return if you want.
Yeah. So why don't you start?
Okay. Let me just take a sip of my smoothie. A random act of kindness that a stranger has done for me.
There's so many little ones, I feel like, where someone just goes out of their way to make sure you're okay, or...
Wow, I might literally, as I close my eyes, it's like a flip book of scenes from traveling. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, I've had many people pay for things for me, like taxi rides, or, someone shared a taxi ride with me and then they completely covered it. Or I've also been in like a coffee shop and someone's paid for the coffee before me, but I don't know who it was. Yeah, like really, really beautiful little moments like that.
But it's so good that you remember, because I feel like a lot of times we don't even notice acts of kindness. We take them for granted. So it's such a good question to ask yourself. Yeah, anyway.
And then even, I guess also, if there's nothing that's coming forward around an act of kindness that has been received while traveling, then the invitation is, where can I start the chain? Where can I start the domino effect of acts of kindness that actually go out into the world? And
it's all gonna come back. Like I tried to like kind of we're super lucky with Jacob to stay in a lot of super fancy hotels, and we've been constantly served and whatnot. So a lot of times I'm just like, like just asking somebody, are you like the person who is serving you? Are you hungry? Can I order an extra meal and just give it to you? Or like, if there's any ways of just like looking out for people that look out for you, and it completely changes the whole dynamic.
Start the chain of the act of kindness. It's up to you. Okay.
Beautiful. I love it.
I got another one. I love these questions. After you left, I was like, yeah, these are great questions. Aww. Okay. Have you ever felt at one with nature? Where was it, and why do you think that was?
I did once, probably more times. Like I feel a lot like connected, but there was this one time I distinctly remember. It was basically about 7 months into my sailing trip, and mind you, I was sailing with one other person. We had no autopilot, so it was just one person sleeping, the other one steering, and then the other one you would go to sleep and the other way around. So you basically, I was there by myself for 8 months, not talking to anybody, having no books, because one small print, I didn't know I get seasick, because I've never been on a boat before. So I had to leave to realize that I get really seasick. I couldn't read any books. It was just me sitting on my own for 8 months. And that's how I picked up meditation properly. for the very first time. And because all I had was time, I would meditate for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. And then I was basically meditating because there was nothing. After about 3 weeks in, you run out of all your thoughts. And it was just, you just sat there and you could sit there for hours and not obsess about your thoughts. And I remember this one morning and I sat on the boat and it was just like the perfect waves and the perfect wind. I didn't have to hold on to the steering wheel. And I was just sitting there and I saw the dolphins that came up in the morning, just like you hear them singing like from afar. It's like a high pitch squeak from afar. So I opened my eyes to see like dolphins everywhere and just I felt like, oh my God, like I am all of that and having that, like, I know that, but like I don't really truly know that, that moment when you actually feel that like you really are all of that. And this is it. And I remember crying. I couldn't stop crying for like an hour, just feeling so blown away and like how perfect everything is. And that was like my truly first spiritual experience that was, completely drug-free, guidance-free. It was just pure nature and pure gratitude, and it was perfect. Probably the best moments of my life.
The animals love it when we meditate.
Yeah,
they're like,
they
oh,
do.
that's a human that's actually being a human being, not a human doing. Okay, let's go hang out with them.
Yeah, so true, so true.
It reminds me of an experience when I was in Nepal and I was trekking through the Himalayas.
I knew this. I want the Nepal story.
It's so good. And I remember I went and it was freezing cold. We were really, really high in the Himalayas and I was on my own and I went to go meditate in the forest because every time I was meditating in the Himalayas, it was instantly connected to spirit. Like there was no, like I have to wade through my thoughts. Like a portal, huh? It was clear, crystal clear. It was pretty next level. So I was sat in the middle of the forest, no one around, nothing around me, had this really thick winter coat on because it's so cold. I have everything covered and I'm just sitting there and I go into like a statue, and I'm like meditating. I don't know how long I was in for, but I was in for a while. Then I open my eyes and as soon as I open my eyes, I'm surrounded by animals, like 2 donkeys, a horse, 5 dogs, some goats. Like I don't know where they'd come from. It was just like they just submerged out of the forest and come to surround me. I felt like a real Disney princess. I was like, what is happening? And instantly just burst into tears. It was just like, if we can silence ourselves enough to really be able to recalibrate our frequency to nature's frequencies, the animals will speak that energy and they are gravitated towards it.
I mean, they're already speaking that energy. They just, you're not speaking that energy. So they're like running away, but it's just,
It was special. So your dolphin experience reminded me of that moment of truly being one with nature. Yeah. The real life Disney princesses sailing through the ocean and in the Himalayas, just communicating with animals. And here comes the donkey.
But I have to admit, like when you hear those stories, you're like, okay, that sounds a little out there, but it's so true.
Welcome to Deja Blu podcast, where out there is the new normal.
I love it.
All right, one final question.
Ready? Yeah.
This one feels real ripe. Okay. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to a person who has never left their hometown?
Ooh, that's a leave. Leave right now. I'd say the fact that this is your hometown doesn't really mean anything. And yes, it has taught you certain things, but the fact you don't have to relate to people around you. You don't have to have things in common. You don't have to feel like you belong just because it's your hometown. You have to find your own hometown out there. And if it's the same place, great. But I think you have to get out there and find out.
Get out of your hometown, sweetheart. There's a whole world of adventures waiting to be had.
What would you say?
Well, first and foremost, there's narratives of like, well, I don't have enough money to leave or to travel or to get on a plane, and travel is expensive for the most part. Like flights and gas to travel across America or things like that. It really is costly, and for someone that has children or there's many different factors. and variables that take into account. However, I think that it is really important, specifically like if I think about having children, how I would like to raise them if I can and put it at the top of my priority list, that they get to experience many different flavors of human. Because, you know, humans are like a diamond and there's many, many, many different faces of that same diamond. Yes, we have humanity and we have 8 billion different lenses of how to experience the same humanity. So without travel, we can only really experience one fractal of the diamond. But if we are experiencing different cultures, different practices, different religions, different ethnicities, you know, different bloodlines or skin types, then we actually have a little bit more of a well-rounded experience of how to weave through this reality without judging what's different or what we don't understand. So, and I think that by putting it as a priority, there are ways to still experience different cultures on a budget. And so asking ourselves, like, what is the greatest excuse as to why that I'm not traveling? And really confronting that excuse. Is it actually purely based off of truth, or is it an illusion that's built up off of fear? And to like really lean into that. And only individuals will be able to answer that question. I can't like create a blanket statement for everybody. However, I would highly recommend it, because the world, I mean, life, yeah, it seems like we have like a long life, you know, on average we live to like 80 or 90 years old. However, I don't even know if that's the average, do not quote me on that. However, it's actually quite short as well. Like it seems really long, but it's also quite short. Yeah. And so it's just realizing that this planet is so multidimensional, multifaceted, and there's so many flavors. It's like eating one piece of fruit for the rest of our lives and being like, I'm bored of bananas, or like I'm bored of mangoes. We want to have like a fruit salad.
For sure. And I think it doesn't matter how good my morning practice is and how deep my conversations are. If I feel disconnected from nature and I feel like I haven't truly like walked barefoot, or I'm not surrounded by trees or whatnot, I get really, really depressed. Like for me, it's just the correlation's very clear. So I'd say like, maybe you're not depressed, maybe you're just surrounded by assholes or not enough nature.
When we lose connection with our true nature, it's because we've not spent enough time in nature, because we are so interconnected and interwoven. Beautiful.
Very much.
Aggie, I have one final question for you, which does not live in here, but just another little shameless plug. If you're interested in having a collection of some very fascinating questions that Jacob and Aggie have poured their heart and soul into creating for you, so that you can actually have great conversations and put your cell phones away, then When Traveling is available now, and we'll put the link in the description for you to get yourself your own copy and support Aggie and Jacob and their creative endeavors.
Thank you.
So one final question for today. If this microphone, Aggie, was connected to all of the media outlets around the whole planet, and you have 30 seconds to deliver a message to humanity.
Oh my goodness.
I know. That's literally everyone's response whenever I dump this question up. People are like,
take a deep breath. God. Great. I was like, oh, this has been great. And then she comes out with the last question. Like, oh shit, this sucks.
And you can take a moment to tune into it. It doesn't need to be super complex.
I think my message would be I'd say you are a human being, human as in on this planet. So make sure you spend enough time connecting to everything that's human, and use that humanity to take you up towards your journey to spirituality. And love nature, smile a lot, don't take your life too seriously, and don't try to get everything perfect, because messy is good. And it's playful and it's fun, and and just have empathy for yourself. I think this is like all the like notes to self, basically. But
I mean, it is a great note. This is brilliant. Come on,
and surround yourself with amazing people.
I mean, I think that there's some pretty solid pillars to write in someone's journal. Like, don't take yourself too seriously. Oh yeah, shit, I took myself too seriously today. Smile a lot. Enjoy the ride. Don't get hung up on perfection.
Enjoy the ride, exactly. Just like fucking enjoy it, like really just for what it is. It's wild, and I think, please, like that's my takeaway from this podcast, is to just get inspired by people that just go deep, but then just like are just at ease with life and just flow. Flow is my favorite word, because it's just like It's just so easy how it's meant to be. And life is meant to be easy and light and joyful. And you're that, Blue. And that's why I love you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for bringing your wisdom to the Bluebirds, to Deja Blu podcast, and for allowing yourself to be witnessed and also showing up. When I messaged you and I was like, you want to come on the podcast? And you're like, yeah, I feel super honored. I also feel slightly unworthy to come on the podcast, which I was like honored that you said that. I was like, oh, like placing the podcast, in this space, but for leaning in anyway and to feeling, that like, but then still showing up and coming on. And like I said with you, Chelsea Kwai said the same thing when I was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And it's pretty classic for a content creator to be, to then be like, oh, this is a deeper layer of sharing myself with the world. But
that I don't mind. I feel like just the tribe you were able to attract around you is super conscious, super deep. And my first question is like, can I be of any value? Or can I just gonna spend an hour repeating the same cliches people already know? And I think that's like respecting your audience time. That was like, if I can offer any value, that's great. If I feel like I'm just gonna be like, oh, travel the world to find yourself, then that wouldn't be ideal.
Well, you definitely added way more paint to the canvas than this travel the world and find yourself. But it was really just being able to experience life through Aggie's eyes and the wisdom that you've cultivated through all of your journeys and all of your experiences. And I feel like you are just like a sponge that has absorbed experiences that a lot of us haven't. And so through your storytelling and through your wisdom, we get to have a little snippet into what that feels like.
Thank you so much, Blue. Thank you for having me. And thank you for cultivating that space where your guests feel welcome and ready to share.
This is all I want to do is highlight other individuals and their unique potent medicine that we all bring to the table. Yay. Love you, Aggie. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So thank you for tuning into another episode of Deja Blu podcast. If you resonate with this episode, if there's something that you feel like the people that in your lives could really benefit from, then please go ahead and share it, because when you share the message, it reaches more people than anyone that we would be able to connect with. So this is an opportunity for you to take on the responsibility of sharing a message that feels true for you. And in the meantime, if you have any questions for any of the future guests or any interactions or any feelings that you feel from this podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe onto the YouTube channel and to write in the comments section any feelings or anything that came up for you in the podcast. And we will be checking the comments and feeling into the community that is built around this podcast. So in the meantime, until next week, sending you so much love and so much appreciation. And remember that the world is one giant adventure waiting to be experienced, and you are responsible and in the driving seat of your own personal adventure. Sending you so much love and so much gratitude. Until next week, bless, bless.